Welcome everyone to the morning session, and this is a very distinguished panel, and we are going to talk about an interesting issue, the governance, the state of governance in Bangladesh. Before moving into the overall discussion, let me just provide a brief introduction of our distinguished panelists. As you have all known, we have Dr. Ali Riaz with us, who is joining via Zoom. He's a political scientist. He's a distinguished professor at Illinois State University. He's been working a lot on religion and politics, and we will, of course, learn from him and see his perspective on the political governance in Bangladesh. We also have with us Dr. Bodil Alam Mujumdar, an economist by training. He's a development worker. He's a political analyst and have been working on local government issues and an election expert. He's also the founder secretary of Citizens for Good Governance, and he's also the vice president and country director of the Hunger Project. So we will hear from him the role of the civil society organizations, the local governance, and other issues which will enrich our discussion on governance. Finally, we have with us Dr. Fahmida Khatun, an economist who focuses on policy analysis and project management. She is currently the executive director of Center for Policy Dialogue. We will hear from her perspective on the state of economic governance and the state of development of Bangladesh. Again, let me briefly start this session. Before starting this session, I need to just point out one thing. When we talk about governance, governance has kind of become a buzzword. We try to use this word with everything, and we try to define it from different perspectives. Sometimes it is about managing the government services, the process of governing. When World Bank talks about governance, it's more about good governance, and they looked into 6 indicators: voice and accountability, regulatory quality, control of corruption, and such other things. And when we talk about governance from a political perspective, we sort of focus on more on the democratic institutions, institution building, and institutional design. So let me start from that particular perspective, from the political governance perspective. And as long as we have Dr. Ali Riaz with us, I want to start with him. To Dr. Ali Riaz, my question is, whenever we are talking about political governance, whenever we are talking about a democratic political governance, how should we actually define that concept? How should we actually sort of think about political governance in the perspective of Bangladesh? And how will you sort of analyze the current state of democratic governance in Bangladesh? Over to you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. It seems to be there's some confusion with respect to the muting, those technical things here. Nevertheless, what I was saying, thank you. Thank you for this generous introduction, and thank you to CJS for arranging this wonderful session and giving this opportunity to join this esteemed panel. As you have raised, of course, there are 2 ways to assess the governance, and you are trying to focus on the political part of it. Let me put it this way. The way I see the question of governance and assessing, particularly when we are looking at the 50 years of celebration of Bangladesh, there are 2 ways to look into it. And as Dr. Shahan has quite rightly pointed out, the common attributes with respect to the governance, the ones usually used by multilateral organization or the World Bank, so to speak, they use few attributes, and 6 of them are quite common and quite well known. Those are the ones that transparency, accountability, control of corruption, efficiency, inclusiveness, and rule of law. In a sense, those are the operative part of it. Governance in the sense of the daily routine works that you can think of. That is one way to look at it. Its importance and its significance cannot be underestimated, or definitely I would not say that these are not useful. Of course, those are, and we will use those even in case of Bangladesh, when Bangladesh is celebrating the 50 years, or even if it is 100 years, we are going to use some kind of attributes to look into it. Over the last 50 years, based on these attributes, whether the Bangladesh has succeeded, or at least, if are you asking me? I can
yes. Sir, yeah, I am asking you, sir. So, yeah.
Now, what I was saying is that the one way to assess with this, using these indicators, these attributes that we know of, And in this context, one of the major problems that we have seen is, say, for example, the transparency issue or the accountability issue. Particularly if you look at the accountability issue, in case of the governance in Bangladesh, throughout the past 50 years, the accountability, there are various ways of accountability. One, of course, is the vertical one that we know of. The vertical one is the electoral system to begin. And over the last 50 years, what we have seen, if you discount the first 2 decades, because the first two decades, most of it was under the military regime, hence there was no reason for even expecting a sort of accountability, because the military regimes have ruled the country without any mandate. Hence, even before that, there has been tendency of authoritarianism despite the election. But since 1991, when we saw Bangladesh started its third decade, the accountability mechanism that was supposed to be in place, the vertical accountability mechanism that was supposed to be there, is the election. Initially, there was a system that has emerged out of the caretaker government that would allow to have at least once in 5 years, an election which is fair, or relatively fair at least, and acceptable and inclusive, definitely. But that situation is gone. So if you look at this vertical accountability mechanism, that has left completely, left out of this accountability mechanism that Bangladesh could have, should have, and would have been. In a similar fashion, if you are talking about the horizontal mechanism of accountability, the civil society, or in case of the parliamentary system, as we know, the parliamentary committee. But given that the parliament has not actually functioned well in the case of Bangladesh, and the parliamentary committees have not succeeded in managing or maintaining some sort of, supervision or monitoring of the governance part, that is the executive part, we didn't see much. But also, in terms of this horizontal one, there are other ways of other mechanisms that should have been there. The institutions, such as National Human Rights Commission, such as SAC, that is Anti-Corruption Commission, or other organizations that could be, the civil society organization could have. But even if we take that the horizontal mechanism would be the ones which are constitutionally mandated, such as National Human Rights Commission, such as this Anti-Corruption Commission, none of them actually function. None of them practically function because whoever is in power have never been committed to this accountability mechanism. Even today, if you look at these, what we have seen, National Human Rights Commission has not been, has not taken up any issue that would make the incumbent uncomfortable, so to speak. When the Anti-Corruption Commission, Chief of Anti-Corruption Commission recently, who has just been retiring from the ACC, has said that he would rather prioritize the image of the country. That means, and make compromises, according to him. So these things are clearly that the institutional mechanism of constitutionally mandated horizontal accountability mechanism has not worked, unfortunately. Then if you take the societal mechanism, that comes from the civil society, that comes from the media. In case of Bangladesh, there's a large number of media, and often it is argued that the media works because we have so many media, so many outlets, television channels and newspapers. But given the relentless attack on the civil society, vilification of civil society that we have seen over the years, once there was a very vibrant civil society in Bangladesh, which could have been, initially there had been some kind of accountability, at least the demand from accountability. But that didn't continue because of over the past decade or so. What we have seen, two things we have seen since 1990. One, in case of civil society, one is the politicization of civil society. That means clearly a partisan nature. And this partisan nature has fragmented the civil society and weakened it. And eventually, through the vilification and other attacks, practically it has decimated over the years. So here we go. I am just taking one of these elements. Then if you look at the inclusiveness or rule of law, take for the case of rule of law, we know that until 2007, there hasn't been any substantive effort to make the judiciary independent. The relationship between the executive and judiciary was so tilted toward the independence of the judiciary was completely non-existent, despite the fact the Constitution actually talked about it. Hence, we have seen in 2007, unfortunately, a government which was not mandated to govern came forward and done it, which reflected the court's verdicts. But what happens? Recently, retiring justice of the Supreme Court has mentioned that it is only on paper. He didn't go further than that. But he told us that we know. So let us assume that we do know what is the situation. If we do know, then rule of law, over the last 50 years, even now, when a justice is telling us that it is only on paper, we can understand the situation. And then, all these mechanisms, all these institutions that were supposed to be built has not been built. Rather, what we have seen is the concentration of power. And in case of Bangladesh, particularly after 1991, when Bangladesh moved from the presidential system to prime ministerial system, I'm deliberately using that one as opposed to parliamentary system, because what happened? Yes, of course, Bangladesh officially own constitution moved to the parliamentary system. But when it moved to the parliamentary system, it has transferred the power of presidency, lock, stock, and barrel to the prime minister. And given the Bangladesh constitution and Bangladeshi political party, gives the individual leader of the party so much power, and then constitutional power. The power has concentrated into the hands of the prime minister. Wherever that may be, that's not the point who is the prime minister. We have seen since 1991. Gradually, this is called executive aggrandizement. Prime Minister represents the executive party. Hence, when the Prime Minister is, or Prime Minister's office and Prime Minister personally is having this kind of power as a leader of the party, as the Prime Minister, as the leader of the parliamentary party of the ruling party. And then you have Article 70, which does not allow the members of the parliament to speak out vis-a-vis its own party. What does happen? It happens that practically, on the one hand, it is shutting the accountability mechanism completely off. On the other hand, we have seen that there is no way of asking for any kind of transparency. And that is what has happened. So if you take those indicators, but then again, what I would say is that let us for the moment move away. Move away and look at what the Bangladesh, the political party, Bangladeshi constitution and the Bangladesh proclamation of independence. Both of them actually laid out that what should be the goal of this country and how the governance should be assessed.
Right. So can I just...
If you look at that, what happens is that is what they say, that they had a mandate. They came up with this proclamation because they had a mandate. Right. And that is what is missing in this case. In case of Bangladesh, the fairly acquired democratic mandate is missing.
Right.
And the second thing, and I will stop there,
I want to interrupt here for a minute.
The second point is the power to the people. Basically, Bangladesh constitution says that all powers in the republic belong to the people. If there is no way of representation, if the popular sovereignty is undermined, then how would you expect that the governance should be assessed? This is the basis of the assessing the governance. That is how I see.
Right.
So, on both counts, I don't see a very positive thing.
So I will come back to you. I mean, due to time constraint, I have to sort of move ahead. There are several issues that you have raised regarding the role of the institutions of accountability, how they are failing, how the democratic system has kind of, faltering. We will come back to those issues later. But you kind of set up kind of a good stage for the next question, that when we are talking about all the failures of the democratic system, we still see that Bangladesh is improving. Bangladesh is making achievements in the development area. That is why we often consider Bangladesh as a development paradox. So that kind of sets up my next question to Dr. Fahmida Khatun, which I asked earlier, that how can we explain this paradox? So how can Bangladesh achieve this success within this malfunctioning governance system?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. And I would like to congratulate CGS for organizing this. And on this occasion, I would like to remember the martyrs of independence. So we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Bangladesh's independence. And I also remember the father of the nations on this occasion. So this discussion is very important. I think Professor Ali Riaz has set the scene to a large extent. Now, you have rightly pointed out that during the last 5 decades, Bangladesh's economy has progressed very impressively and compared to its peers. If you look at South Asian countries, or if you look at the other least developed countries across the world, it has outpaced all other economies. It is one of the outliers, even during a crisis like the ongoing corona pandemic. Now, there are several explanations for this progress. I would come to the governance issue a little later, but if you look at some of the reasons for development, because I think you all know that many economists have also described that Bangladesh's development, it is a surprise. I mean, it is termed as development surprise, but and development occurred despite deficiency in many aspects, not only in governance. But I feel that what has worked for Bangladesh, 2-3 indicators. One is the policy stability. In the beginning, you were talking about some of the indicators of governance. This World Bank's worldwide governance indicator, which includes 6 indicators. But there are debates also, because how do we define governance? And whether these 6 indicators encompass all aspects of governance, that is a big question. But even then, I will deal with that later on. But so quite often, we discuss about political stability. Here, I'm talking about policy stability, because I think since Bangladesh's birth, Bangladesh started with an economy which wanted to be a centralized, planned economic, structure, framework. But after the killing of the father of the nation in 1975, the economy the policies have changed. It has taken a shift towards open market economy, privatization, denationalization, all this happened. And towards the 80s and 90s and afterwards, so we have opened up. And what has happened that no matter which political party came to power, the broader policy regime had remained similar, because after from the time of the structural and adjustment policy, which was initiated by the World Bank, that which also expedited the process of privatization and open market policy. So that policy had been actually consolidated in the later decades by all governments of the day. So there was some sort of policy stability. And also, along with enabling domestic policies, there were global policies which helped Bangladesh. For example, the case of multi-fiber arrangement, under which Bangladesh was given, not only Bangladesh, the least developed countries were given duty-free, quota-free market access. And Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, particularly the ready-made garments manufacturers, they could take advantage of that, and they could export and contribute to the national foreign exchange reserve. The other issue is that along with the enabling policy environment, people of Bangladesh have been very resilient. If you look at 3 major sectors of the economy, the agriculture, the manufacturing sector, and the services sector. So the policies which have been provided for agriculture, including input subsidies and various support for the inputs and technology, we have seen now that Bangladesh has become a food self-sufficient country, so we don't have to import. Only about 5% of our requirement we have to import. So, and the innovation in the agriculture through green revolution, what is termed as the green revolution, that has really helped. And those are actually local innovation rather than indigenous innovation rather than external innovation. So that's one thing. So of course the government support combined with people's contribution. Now if you look at the manufacturing sector again, I have just mentioned regarding the Bangladeshi private entrepreneurs who had taken advantage of the global policies, so they could they had come to the ready-made garments and industry, and they could increase their exports. So they could fully utilize, or much better than other countries. So there are many, about 48 LDCs, 48 to 50 LDCs during the last 50 years or so. Not all of them could utilize those facilities which have been given. And now, if we come to the third sector, the services, so which is the remittances for services by people. So Bangladesh is again another example of exporting human resources, and these are the less skilled, low-skilled human resources who could earn remittances and could send to Bangladesh. So that is again another very important source of foreign exchange. So all these sectors, behind all these sectors, people have really contributed. Now, if you come, so these are the important issues, how Bangladesh has progressed and how it is doing so well. Now, the relationship between growth and governance is somewhat fuzzy and not very clear in case of, at least in case of Bangladesh, because we are seeing that as we are growing, we are having a high growth, but at the same time, if you look at the governance index, which WGI, we are, even if you compare among the South Asian countries, we are not doing well. There are theories that as you progress economically, then you can also focus more on improving the governance. But but if you look at the chart, I don't have the chart. I wish I could show that a trend which is showing that economic growth is going up, but at the same time governance indicators are fluctuating. Sometimes it is going downward. So which means that economic growth is not helping towards improving governance. In many countries we have seen historically, for example, China, for example, South Korea, at the initial phase of their development, they had poor governance. But what we see now that, particularly in case of South Korea, it is a high-income country, and it has improved its governance to a large extent. But then again, as I have mentioned, that these 6 indicators are not comprehensive, and we also don't have data scientific data to prove scientifically that whether there is a relationship between growth and governance. That is a very difficult question. But now many people, as I've mentioned, that many economists call that development surprise despite governance deficiency. But there are also explanations that why Bangladesh progressed despite governance. This is not only, I have mentioned some of the indicators, but also the Bangladesh's low-cost technology, then innovation in case of, particularly in case of health and education, and support by the non-government organizations, and also microfinance. So these are other factors which had helped not only for economic development, but also for social development. So this is another explanation. Now, yes, though we don't have data, but there are evidences which prove that that there is a deficiency in some of the economic institutions. For example, and governance can actually have a negative impact or discouraging impact for some economic activities. For example, private investment in Bangladesh is not very encouraging for the last couple of years, despite the fact that the government has very good investment policies for domestic private investment and also for foreign private investment, foreign development, foreign direct investment, FDIs. But it is not, we are not seeing any surge in that. Why is that? Because for investment, the investors will look at two indicators, at least two indicators. One is the transaction cost, that how much cost, what we call that ease of doing business or cost of doing business. So how much transaction cost is involved to invest, to set up an industry or to make an investment. So that is one factor. And then the second one is also related to this, is that expectation or the predictions of future. Because when an investor comes, the investor looks not only for today, but also for tomorrow and beyond that, in the medium to longer term. So what is expected? How the investment will, give the return. So these are the factors, and this is also a matter of perception. Not only, the indicators or the numbers cannot really always give the real scenario, real picture. So those are the factors in case of private investment. Similarly, I will just mention two other, then I can just two other areas where governance is very important. Another one is that if you look at the domestic resource mobilization, Bangladesh is now at a journey. You know that it is a high-growing country. It is going to be a developing country. It will be graduating from least developed country by 2026. So the whole dynamics of or the whole development trajectory will change. So now domestic resource mobilization will be very important. But again, here we are seeing that Bangladesh is not performing very poorly, but if you look at even within South Asia, it is the lowest within South Asia in terms of tax GDP ratio, revenue GDP ratio. Why is that not working? Because after 5 decades or 50 years of Bangladesh's independence, and we are also talking about using technology, using improving the skills of human resources, capacity development, but we are not being able to improve on that, because there are also discussions, or there are also some again there's no evidences as such, though there's no studies, but as from anecdotal information and all, we know that there are inefficiency and also malpractices. The bigger, the powerful people or the more influential people can get away with paying lower taxes, whereas the others, the low-hanging fruits or the people, common people, have to pay regular taxes. But quite often we hear that the richest people of the society, how much they have paid, so tax evasion, tax avoidance is very high. Also, illicit financial flow is also again very high. The third one, which is very much related to the governance issue, is the financial sector. Now we are seeing that the banking sector is grappling with high non-performing loan. And who are the defaulters? If you look at the defaulters, these are the powerful people who are rich, who have connections with the power, and they are not they can influence to classify their loans and go for years after years. So this is where is the rule of law, or where is governance? This is another sector which is suffering from lack of governance very, very strongly. Now, how do we? So I'll just conclude in one line that though we don't have evidences that the lack of governance is stifling growth, because we are growing despite these deficiencies. But I think, at one point in time, if you want to sustain the growth, then the problem will arise. Maybe we don't know, how far we can go, but at one point in time when we will have really, lack of resources, domestic resources, for meeting the increasing demand, when we will be facing problems in the, in the financial sector, or in case of private investment, because investment is also related to employment generation. So in the medium to long term, we'll have problems if we do not address these challenges.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dr. Fahmida Khatun. I think many important issues have come up. I mean, you have talked about the policy stability, which has played an important role. But at the same time, you have also sort of pointed out the significance of governance, which may play a very important role in the future in terms of sustaining the economic growth that we have achieved. Now, what we have learned, when Dr. Ali Riaz was talking about a vibrant civil society, the civil society has played an important role, not only in, making the policies, implement the policies, but also in making the democratic society more accountable, more manageable, and at the same time more effective. So going back to that particular perspective, I want to ask Dr. Bodil Alamudin's perspective on how will you evaluate the civil society organization's performance right now in sort of fostering the democratic governance or bolstering the democratic governance, and the challenges that we see, how can we sort of overcome that?
Thank you. Very tough question. He's asking me about the role of the civil society. Where is the civil society, my question? I don't see any civil society. In fact, the civil society I see, much of it is evil society in a sense. They are either BNP civil society or Awami League civil society. And in fact, our successive governments have been able to divide the core of the civil society into Awami civil society and BNP civil society through patronage distribution, through giving different type of privileges from vice chancellorship to other appointments. So the civil society truly is that part of the society that speaks for people's rights, that speaks out of their commitment to uphold the rights of the people and driven by their conscience, and they are non-partisan. And that number has been dwindling over time. So I don't see much of a civil society, unfortunately. But civil society has an important role. I look at governance as in the form of a triangle. In one corner of the triangle is laws, rules, and rules which are framed in the interest of the people, to support the people, to safeguard the interest of the people. So it's very important that rules and laws are the right kind of laws. And we know some laws that we have been now criticizing and asking for the abrogation of those laws, such as Business Securities Act. And laws like these are not really framed to promote the interest or promote the rights of the people. So laws and rules must be in the interest of the people. That's one part of the triangle. The other part is the process, the system. The process and system also must be right to be able to make sure that the laws and rules are followed, and also whenever there are inconsistencies, there are deviations, the rules and the systems will kick in and take care of the problem. So this is the second leg of the triangle. The third leg is the institution. There are three types of institution. One is constitutional institution. As you know, these are created to make sure that the power that we as voters that transfer to a group of people who become our representatives, they work in our interest. And whenever they are empowered, one of the unique feature of power is that power is concentrated, power is misused. So these constitutional bodies are created to make sure that the power doesn't corrupt, and also power is not used in the self-interest of those who have been empowered by being elected. They don't use that power for their own self-interest as well as in their quota interest. And that was not enough. Then there are institutions that are created by laws. The Anti-Corruption Commission, Human Rights Commission, the other commissions, and these are also supposed to serve the same purpose, to keep eyes on the rulers and the people who are empowered, so that they don't misuse power or grab power and concentrate power. Then there is the other leg is the institutions. There are, we talked about two types of institutions, and the other institutions is non-state institutions. That's where comes the civil society. The institutions, the constitutional institutions, as well as institutions created by law, they are supposed to keep eyes on the rulers and those who are powerful. But the civil society is expected to keep tab on everybody, including all these institutions, southern institutions. So if the civil society is not functional, if civil society is not vibrant, if civil society doesn't do its job, then the other institutions can also become non-functional and not serve the interests of the people, rather serve in the interest of the rulers and the coteries. So it's very important that we have a vibrant, strong, functional civil society. Unfortunately, we do not have such a civil society in this country. And one of the reasons is that the space has been shrinking. The restrictive laws and the enforcement of those laws, and taking away our political rights as well as our civic rights. And in that situation, the civil society cannot really function. And also in this country there is misunderstanding about civil society, and many times NGOs are taken to represent the civil society, but NGOs are not necessarily civil society. There are different type of NGOs. NGOs come in many shapes and sizes. There are microcredit NGOs, and they really do not act to uphold the rights of the people, and do not challenge the authorities to ensure that the people's rights are safeguarded. And then there are also service delivery entities. There are a lot of service delivery organizations, and they basically are the contractors. They do contract work for the government, and many times, and they also do not challenge the government. So they are not really, they do advocacy for certain rights, which do not really make the rulers and the ruling coteries upset, such as women's rights. And they are not, they don't have to confront the rulers for promoting the women's rights. So in a sense, they are also part of the civil society, but they are not really the civil society which promotes people's political rights. And they are civic rights, fundamental rights. Then there are very limited number of organizations which are advocacy organizations, and which try to promote the people's rights, and which try to safeguard people's rights. And because of the shrinking space, and because of the restrictive laws, and because of the other repressive measures, and they cannot really function, unfortunately. So this is the state of affairs. And in fact, the civil society over time becoming weaker and weaker in Bangladesh. In fact, the people, very limited number of people, very limited number of organizations which have been standing up to the authorities and challenging the authorities, and promoting the rights of the people, their number is dwindling. Part of the reason is natural reason, and part of the reason is the various patronizers that have been distributed through patronage distribution. They have been bought off basically, and also the repressive measures of the successive government also silenced many of them, and they feel it safe to go silent, not to challenge the authority, not to speak up, and not to do anything that will risk their own safety and security as well as their loved ones' safety and security. And so this is the state of affairs, and we are not in a good shape. If we are to have a vibrant democratic system, we need not only the vibrant constitutional institutions, we not only need the statutory bodies, but also the non-state institutions. At the same time, we need the right kind of laws, the laws and rules which serve the interest of the people. To give an example, many of you know that two laws were framed at the same time. One was Digital Security Act, and another is the Road Safety Act. Digital Security Act went into effect right away because it was not in the interest of the people. It was intended to serve the rulers. So it went into effect right away, and it has been taking its bites and taking its toll on many people. On the other hand, the Road Safety Act, it has been stumbling along, and it has not been able to be implemented yet, because that would have served the interest of the people. That was going against the quota interest. So this is the state of affairs, and I'll end here. And
thanks a lot. We are really running out of time, and I want to allocate some time for question answers. But I just want to sort of give our panelists just one round, and considering the time constraint, I want to give everyone not more than 2.5 minutes. So I understand that's very difficult to talk about, but since we have talked about the past and the present, talked about a bleak scenario, I want to go back to Professor Ali Riaz. What do you think about the future, and what can actually we do to improve the democratic political institutions? I know it cannot be answered in 2.5 minutes, so if you can just give your broad perspective, I think, and then we can move ahead. Yeah. I mean, just after this round, we will ask questions. After this round, we will. Yes, Professor Ali Riaz, if you can hear me.
Dr. Shahan, if we want to look at the future is made today. Future is not something that is going to emerge out of nowhere. The current trajectory that we see with respect to the institutional building, there's no incentive from the incumbent for building these institutions. Rather, they would prefer not to have those institutions. As Dr. Badullah Mujumdar has rightly pointed out, the institutions, if we call it non-state actors, they are practically decimated, weakened, silenced, and the constitutional institutions have not been built as such to supervise, to monitor. So what is the pathway? What is the trajectory? The trajectory is until and unless you go back to the basics, which Bangladesh Constitution has insisted on. And that's why I think the primary thing at this point on the question of governance is with respect to establishing the right of the people to be part of the governance. Here, how do you become part of the governance if there is no fair election mechanism? And that is what is more important. Election itself is not going to solve it, but you cannot bypass that. And that is one thing. And that's why consent of the governed is absolutely necessary. Fairly acquired democratic mandate is necessary. Without those, Bangladesh may achieve some economic growth, which also is lopsided to some extent. The governance situation is not going to improve. I do not see any possibility other than the trajectory is a very non-inclusive governance, and increasingly that will turn into an authoritarian system.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Ali Riaz, and thanks for giving within the time. Dr. Fahmida Khatun, if I sort of you have talked a little bit about the challenges ahead for Bangladesh within the kind of the governance challenges. So how can we sort of overcome that? What can be the possible action? Again, I understand that you need
this is a very difficult
Right.
question, and it requires a lot of explanation and research and discussion also. But what I would say that, we have done marvelous during the last 50 years, but if we want to move forward and if we want to look for the next 50 years, I think we have to change ourselves. And change, now that we are discussing about governance issues, institutional reform is a must, because we have done well despite that reforms had not taken place, be it political reform, be it economic reform. So for economic reform, since I'm focusing on economic issues, reform in the banking sector, reform in the national revenue system, reform, overall reform in the whole financial system is required. And also we have to actually prepare for the 21st century reality, and also that since we will be, during the next 50 years, we will be graduating from least developed countries. We will have to be not only compliant within ourselves, but we have to be compliant globally, because we have to then play with the global partners. And as you know that once you graduate, you have to have many compliance issues. For example, if you really want to have duty-free access or quota-free access, you can have in the European market. I'm just giving a small example that we had benefited from the duty-free quota-free access, but what will happen after that? We will still be able to access some of the markets under GSP plus, what is called GSP plus, generalized system of preferences, which we get in the European market. But in order to do that, in order to have that access, we have to improve upon our various compliance in the case of labor issues, in case of environmental issues, in case of human rights issues. So all these have to be, improved upon, and for that we need reforms. Right. So this is just one example. Same goes for the financial sector. Right. There are international regulations which we will have to abide by.
Absolutely.
So, and I would say that in the next 50 years we also have to look at the technological areas. So we have to rely more and more on technology, how we can use that for our governance issues. That is also, and many countries have shown that.
Right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Fahmida. Dr. Bodulala Mojumdar. I mean, you have talked about the bleak scenario in the civil society front. What is the way out? Again, 1.5 minutes?
Okay. The way out, the rules, laws, and laws, and the systems and the institutions. And if they function, then we have governance system functioning. We have good governance. If they don't function, we have bad governance, we have autocracy. And in fact, this whole governance system has been demolished. And we had a demolition derby. And as a result, all the powers and everything got concentrated. And the system, the laws are framed not to empower people, but to just do the opposite. And the institutions has been really destroyed, and the systems don't work. Now, if we are to really have good governance, and our economic success would not sustain if we don't have good governance, right governance. And so the rules and laws will have to be framed, amended or thrown out so that they serve the interest of the people. The systems will have to be in place, and the institutions will have to work so that the institutions ensure the horizontal, Dr. Ali Riaz talked about the horizontal accountability. The institutions can ensure horizontal accountability. And another thing, most important thing I think we need to do, we need to ensure the downward accountability, vertical accountability. And vertical accountability is ensured through elections. After every 5 years, if those who get elected have to go to the people and beg for votes, and the people can show red cards and get rid of them, then they will have to work in the interest of the people. So we'll have to ensure free and fair elections.
Thank you.
and
Thank
and
you.
then make all these institutions work. Then only we can have think of a better future.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think we have like 7 minutes, so we can take a couple of questions. Not many. So, gentleman over here probably raised a question. Can you just please, go directly to the question, given that we don't necessarily have that much time, so that we can hear back from our panel. Yes.
Definitely. My name is Barrister Sarwar. I am a practicing lawyer in the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. We heard from that panel and also from the inaugural session. We are running in a state, as already mentioned, that with the public money, a bank official called P.K. Haldar maintained 80 girlfriends. And just to mention another example, a VC, I come to the question, a VC, highly educated, having corruption allegations, alleged corruption allegations of 111 counts. 111 counts. My question to the panel, we hear a slogan that a role model of development. My question to the panel, can there be a real development? Can there be a sustainable development without rule of law and justice? Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. That's a good question. We will come back to the answer. Let's take one more, few other questions. I think, gentleman over there, then I will come back.
Thank you. I'm Parvez Abbasi, an economist by profession. I'll be very brief. There are two observations, but let me just make one statement that somehow 50 years of celebration of Bangladesh is being somehow tied up with 80 girlfriends of some persons. I don't think Bangladesh deserves much better regarding a person's love life or whatever. The question that I have, one is for Dr. Fahmida. It seems that, from reading between your lines, is when the middle income group increases in large number, usually that has been the case, the pressure or the demand for good governance increases. So in Bangladesh's case, we have seen that growth has been there, but as you have also pointed out, good governance indicators has not registered commensurate gain. So is the only way for good governance in Bangladesh or in the other parts of this South Asia is that growth stalls and then there's a painful need for readjustment. So is actually continuous growth in itself a barrier towards implementing reforms for good governance?
Right.
That's one question. Just one more.
I think let's stick to one because we want to sort of hear the
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mahatabuddin Ahmed Chaudhry. I am an RMG exporter. My question, in 50 years, we developed or we had gone back to 73 years. Before 73 years, there was Pakistanis, they were not recruiting us. But after 50 years of liberation, now if I am going to be recruited in army or police or any government job,
come to the question.
my question is coming.
Yeah.
The DGFI, NSI and other agents are going there and they are taking the history of the family. Even if my son is going, my sister's house, what my sister's husband doing, all these things are taking as I am doing the BNP. Does it mean in future the BNP's son, daughters, they will not work in government job?
Okay.
This is my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think let's stop here. If you want to sort of give our panel a chance to answer, because we just only have 3 minutes. Let me start with Dr. Fahmida Khatun. Given that one question was, registered you, the question about is the growth barrier to good governance in the context of Bangladesh.
I think two questions are related. First one was, can there be sustainable development without rule of law? As I have mentioned during my discussion that, there is no evidence as such that how they are interconnected. There is no direct causal relationship. However, when we talk about sustainability, that includes many, many dimensions. So, to my understanding, I don't think that sustainable development, per se, development is much bigger concept than growth. So when you talk about development, it is much, much bigger, larger, it encompasses many other indicators which are welfare enhancing. So without rule of law, without governance, there is not, sustainable development is not possible. The other question, the pressure from, whether growth is a barrier for governance. You see, so far, yes, we have, I think sometimes we have some amount of complacency that we are progressing. Despite, whatever happens, we can keep a blind eye to those. However, the history of many countries, or if you look at the history of capitalism, at the beginning, there are, what is called initial accumulation. Capitalism developed through initial accumulation, which means that initial accumulation, how does it happen? Like bribery, through corruption and all these. So I think there are, also tendency in many countries, not all countries will go through the same phases, but many countries go through the same, phases, same ladder, so same road map. Now, I think that after a while, when you talk about, a fair play or giving a level playing field, there will be a problem even within the beneficiary group. Because if you, and I just mentioned that why the private sector is not investing. They don't see any future probably. Many of them, there is no incentive, there is no market incentive for them to invest because the field is not, level for them, not everyone. While we see that over time, the number of businessmen in the parliament has increased so much, and they are the people who actually control or devise policies. And the other, other group who are outside the power periphery, they are not, benefited similarly as they. So there will be conflict even within the broader beneficiary group. So the broader beneficiary group will become, will be divided into smaller ones. So the conflict will arise. And when this conflict will be there, I don't think that any society can, any economy can grow smoothly. So there will be, change must happen at one point in time. I don't know when, but all the, symptoms of other countries, if you can take examples, for example, Latin American countries, how they have, growth has been so unequal, and they're still struggling. So I think we should not be complacent. We should enjoy, celebrate the achievement, but we should be also work for, for consolidation and for retaining the progress what we have achieved so far. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I've been given the opportunity to take one more question. The gentleman over there, and then I will come back to the panel.
Thank you, sir. I am Mahata from Center for Governance Studies. My first question is to Fahmida ma'am, is that since considering the political instability in Bangladesh and other social status, do you think Bangladesh really in a position to talk about good governance, where the governance situation is not in a good hand?
Okay.
Sir, I have a little another question to Bodhidhar ma'am, sir.
I think let's, if you, because we are out of time. I just want to give an opportunity to Dr. Ali Riaz and Dr. Bodhidhar who would like to respond. We have a couple of observations and things. The big question, the main question that has come up is whether Bangladesh can actually be considered a role model for development with all its problems and all its corruptions, allegations of corruptions and the other problems. Dr. Ali Riaz, very, quickly if you want to sort of, respond, and then I will go to Dr. Bodhidhar.
If I have understood the question well, the question is whether Bangladesh can be considered as a role model despite all these things. Is that the question, Dr. Shah?
Yes. The main question is, considering all of the allegations that we have, about corruptions, about politicization and others, should we actually consider Bangladesh as a role model of development?
See, it depends on the perspective, whether you want to be a role model of what. Having what we have discussed, what Fahmida has already brought in, and that, yes, Bangladesh is making progress in terms of the growth, but this growth has been so lopsided, and the disparity has increased. So, if you are considering a part of it, that growth has been achieved despite bad governance, is it the role model? Is it the pathway? Is it replicable? I don't think it is replicable. The role model has to be replicable. I don't think it is replicable. Hence, for me, the perspective is whether it is inclusive. Whether you are talking about the growth, economic growth, or you are talking about the political system. The non-inclusive part, with lack of institutions, where partyarchy has become practically the modus operandi, and then we have this new patrimonial thing. That means the resources, state resources, are being used for patronage and networking. All these things coming together, I don't see that can be a replicable model for anybody. Even for Bangladesh, going forward, Bangladesh should take a very clear look at it, that whether this is a sustainable model, the corruption, the neo-patrimonial networking, and this rent-seeking. Is it a model that Bangladesh should pursue? Besides that, if we go back to the fundamental question, was that the promise of 1971, that this is the kind of Bangladesh we would aspire and establish? I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. We are actually out of time, but I will just give Dr. Budul one sentence.
Well, many of you know that Professor Murtashan wrote a book, Development as Freedom. So the goal of development and the means of development is freedom. Not only you're living better, your basic needs are met, but also greater freedom. So, and most importantly, human being cannot live with bread alone, and we need freedom. And just think about it, all of us taken to this, the abandoned central jail, and kept there confined, and all our needs are met, but you cannot communicate with anybody outside. How long will you be able to live there? So the way things are going, it will not sustain. And also our barrister, Harun Rashid, the issues he referred to is clearly case of governance failure. The UGC is not doing its job. Our chancellor is not doing his. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, our chancellor is not doing their job. So the system is not working. Laws are not working, and the institutions are not working. And in every country, if you look at the history, in many countries there have been primitive accumulation, as Fahmida mentioned, but they needed rule of law to sustain that, to protect their ill-gotten wealth, and also invest, and contract needed to be enforced. And without that, whatever we have will not sustain. So we cannot, no way we can say that we are a role model.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. We are absolutely out of time. I mean, we are 5 minutes, sort of running back. This has kind of been a gloomy morning, to be honest. We are hearing all of those pessimistic stories. Let me just end on a positive note. We have, despite everything, achieved something, and I just want to echo the sentiments reflected by Professor Dr. Fahmida Khatun, that yes, probably we will do better in the future. We will solve all the problems. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for participation. Thanks a lot, Dr. Ali Riaz, for being with us, Dr. Bodil Alam Mujumdar, Dr. Fahmida Khatun, and our participants. Thanks a lot.